Hello, Mark Walsh here from the Embodied Facilitator course. So this is a video on practices, specifically how to help clients design practices. I've got a bunch of other videos on practices, so look those up too. What I wanted to do here was do a bit of an epic kind of mega video listing all the kinds of practices you can give to clients. Okay, first of all, to frame, why would we want to give a practice to a client or suggest that a client develop a practice? Well, practices is how we change things, yeah? You can have insights, you can go, wow, oh, that's interesting, I learned this thing about myself. But unless we put it in the flesh, yeah, knowledge is only a rumour until it's in the muscle. It's an old proverb. Until we put it in the flesh, it's really difficult. And this, to a long-term change, that's what's really needed with practices. So lots of things can motivate practices. I could do a whole thing on that in terms of reminder system, practicalities of practices, small practices, big practices. I'm going to focus mainly on what I call committed practices. So yeah, you can have little micro practices. They're really effective. For example, business clients will often have 5 minutes of walking in a particular way, or a centering practice for 1 minute 3 times a day. And Wendy Palmer, for example, is big on that sort of thing. Really good, those little micro practices, linking it to things like going to the toilet or making a cup of tea or showering, things that people do anyway. We call that linked practices. So they're brilliant, and often the first place I go to with clients, the kind of micro practices, the linked practices, those little things people can be doing at the end of, even like I said, recently I did some half-day stress workshops, and people committed to doing a little meditation, a little gratitude practice, or whatever. So that's all good, but what I wanted to focus on in this video is the bigger practices, so the things that really change people's lives, the things that build a way of being. So most of you know me as a kind of embodiment guide, embodiment coach. So a practice is a way of building a new way of being. So on EFC, the Embodied Facilitator course, for example, we actually take 3 months with participants, going through lots of exercises, reflections, coaching in order to choose a practice. And it needs to be one that practically fits their life as well, like, you know, the teachers nearby, they get on with the club or whatever it is. So this is in some ways quite a big decision, and you know, in some ways, like any embodied practice is going to be helpful to people. Just getting in your body, building basic body awareness is key. I mean, that's a big question, isn't it, really? It's like, what are you trying to build with the practice? That should come first. I tend to see people, for example, say, oh, Mark did Aikido, I want to be like him, so I'm going to do Aikido. Oh, not necessarily a good idea. Maybe they've seen a movie of something, or something just appeals to them. People will often try and do practices that fit their habits, which is okay if you just want some kind of a practice, you know, for body awareness or whatever. But if you're trying to build a new capacity, if you're trying to build range, greater freedom, greater choice, this is my basic model of coaching, building awareness so you can then build range and choice. And practices help embed that massively. Without practice, it's just, you know, a nice thought. So yeah, that's the first question. Is like, with any client, it's like, what are you trying to build with this practice? Yeah, lots of ways of thinking about that. I use the 4 elements model a lot. Other videos on that. What I like about it is pretty commonsensical, so I'm going to refer to that in this video. Now, you may have another version of 4 elements, you know, 5 element model or whatever. Just put that aside. Yeah, basically I'm talking about earth is building structure, solidity, reliability, water, receptivity. Being able to acquiesce, being sensitive, being empathic, fire, that drive, that results orientation, that kind of can do, going after something, and also boundaries, the no, water more the yes, and the air, the lightness, the transcendence, the humour, the visionary qualities, creative qualities. So lots more I can say about the elements. Look at the other videos if you're interested. We've got in-depth videos on those. But that's the basic model I'm going to be using for the sake of this video. Whew. Okay, so what if you have a client who wants to become more earthy? What could you do? Well, anything structured. So, for example, Iyengar yoga is very, very earthy, very exact. Yeah, many Japanese martial arts have that quality. For example, Iaido sword drawing, very exact. You could be thinking more about that, like the grounded quality of earth. For example, like African dance would have that, or the rhythmical quality of earth. For example, something, you know, quite classical, waltz, for example, from the dance front. In meditation-wise, you'd be looking at more, you know, formal sitting times, palms down, focus on the belly, kind of formal, kind of Theravada type style, for example, meditation. Could be helpful there. What else? Talked about martial arts, any classical martial arts. You know, you can take these things quite literally, like something like sumo, which is a wrestling. It's all about the ground. jiu-jitsu, being on the ground. But you also got to look at how it's done. Yeah, so like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for example, when it's on the ground, which is very earthy, it is all about flow and flexibility, which is much more of a kind of water type capacity. Yeah, it's not as fiery as some martial arts, which you might think of martial arts fighting, not so much, yeah. So in terms of yoga, I mean, Ashtanga yoga's got a fire element, we'll come to that, but it also has an earth element. It's regular practice every morning, a structure, a particular form. We've got that, which is beautiful, right? So we've got the earth element in there. Cool, checking the phone, beeping there, probably turn that off. So earth elements, dance, yoga, martial arts. You know, you can also do like other things like maybe gardening. It could be like arranging your desk in a kind of organised way, organising your finances, your desk. I'm going to stick to the kind of more macro practices. Oh, drumming, that was one that a student did as well. So macro practices for earth. Water, what are we looking at? Flow and flexibility. So any of the kind of follower roles in classical partner dance. You can go to queer tango if you're a man, for example. I've done that if you want to do that as a man. You know, it tends to be a bit gendered and old school. Certainly the follow roles in salsa, tango, anything like that. Martial arts, Aikido can be watery, but often isn't. It often looks flowing, but it's often more structured actually. But any kind of very sensitive type of Aikido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu I mentioned before. In terms of yoga, you're looking at something like Scaravelli yoga. You know, this is and there are other yoga forms that are more watery, but ones, don't be fooled by vinyasa, that's more earth and fire. You know, it's supposed to be called flow. It's ones where you're really feeling, where you're softening into things, where there's a degree of responsiveness. I mean, in a way, anything relational is water. So like improv, yes, you could look at that as an air practice because it's creative, but it's also by saying yes, it's also very relational. So there's that aspect. Singing in a choir has that relational quality, so we could look at that as one possibility for water. What else covered? Yeah, so I've covered the major bases there. And again, the micro practices, it might be more or more relational practices around like phoning a friend every day. There's other more general practices like that. Okay, fire, my personal favourite. So martial arts, plenty of fiery martial arts. Kendo is a good one, like eight. One of my students is doing that and loving it at the moment, really building that fire side of himself. Then we've got cage fighting, you know, the kind of fierce thing. Kickboxing. I had a student that said, look, I don't want to be hit, but they went to like kickboxing, like exercise classes, like boxercise classes. You know, more traditional aerobics is going to be more like earthy, something like yeah. So there's so anything sort of rigorous, kind of intense that way. My colleague Vilya in Russia does running as her fire practice, like sprints. You know, not like steady running like for earth. Or water running would be like, you know, just going with the flow, taking as long as you want, looking at things as you go around. She's like sprints, yeah. What else? Dance forms, the male part of tango is quite fiery, female too actually. Flamenco, that's got a degree of fire in it for sure. The passion is part of fire, not just like fierceness and boundaries. Saying no to people, obviously, is a little more micro practice. What do we got? Karate is kind of fire and earth mostly. Dance forms. Oh, crumping, like dance forms. I mean, there's dance forms like 5 rhythms that have many elements in. Like that would have, you know, qualities from all the elements in. So we could look at that. That'd be like the staccato part of 5 rhythms, for example. Yoga style. So anything hardcore, the hot yogas. Vinyasa is still pretty fiery, like pushing your edge, driving, holding postures. Yeah, the only problem from a fire point of view of traditional yoga classes is you have to do what the teacher says all the time. It's actually a water practice. So really good example of how we have to be a little bit careful with this. Yeah, so do you get what I mean? Like if you go to a class, the teacher says do this, do this, do this. You're actually practicing doing what you're told. Yeah, you're practicing following in that sense. So yeah, that's the sort of complicating factor, should we say that? Okay, so we've covered. I mentioned the Ashtanga yogas as well, yeah. Okay, cool. So air, sometimes air is the hardest to find practices for. By definition, air is free-spirited and kind of unformless, so finding a form of formlessness is tricky. It could be the expressive side of air is a bit fiery as well, actually. So I had a student who would read poetry in a creative way. Improv comedy is like a classic air practice. Yoga-wise, there's not that much. I mean, if you look at acro yoga or doing like freestyle yoga on your own, that's a bit more on the air side. Dance, I mean, again, this is where we need to be careful. It's something like ballet, it looks very light and airy, but actually it's very form-based. But anything where there's that free-form creativeness, I think, you know, 5 rhythms, while it has all of it, is very airy in that it's really about listening to yourself. That's the water quality and expressing that kind of free-form creative dance. Contact improv is kind of water mixed with air. Um, yeah, martial arts wise, anything jumpy like taekwondo can be a bit airy. Taking you off the ground, though again, still lots of structure in that. Anything free form and creative. Sistema, for example, is water and air kind of practice of Russian martial art. Yeah, dance wise I mentioned, yoga I mentioned, improv comedy I mentioned. So anything freeform, creative, or anything with that transcendent kind of quality. If we look at meditation again, so we talk about the earth meditation, the water meditation, like feeling, softening into, maybe like metta practice. Fire meditation, more like Zen, like sitting for a certain amount of time, really focusing on the breath, firmness, and the air might be like a visualization. It might be being a bit more creative in one's practice. So they're like some of the categories of things you can build with practices. We've got a PDF link to this on the forum that's available on, if you look at the Body of Coaching new ebook we're releasing, it's available on that, and it actually lists, I probably missed loads, I don't have that in front of me right now. So that's some of the ones we work with. But again, as a coach, once you get the principle of a practice to build a capacity, and then what works with the client, they get with the teacher, they have access to it financially, whatever. That's really important. That stuff too, right? Like if they're traveling in hotels the whole time, they can't go to a regular place. So I knew a guy who wanted to do weights as his practice, but he was a teacher, like me, traveling around a lot. So we did body weight stuff, and we found ways to work with body weight to build different capacities. He wanted to do like earth and fire, kind of nice earth and fire practice, a lot of body weight type stuff. The embodied yoga postures I do, have a look at some of the videos on those. If you look up yin and yang postures, you probably find them, or EYP, embodied yoga principles. We have like a posture for different things. That's super efficient way to practice as well. It's like 1 minute taking up space and being seen, or 1 minute entering, or 1 minute saying yes and receiving. Just even doing it for a moment, I felt the difference. So the EYP posture is a super efficient way to work with this as well, because it kind of really maxes it on a particular capacity. Dylan Newcomb's Uzazu stuff is brilliant. The real masters at looking at practice, Richard Strezzi Heckler, nod to him, one of my early teachers. He's written a lot on practice. And the other one, Ginny Whitelaw. Ginny, I've been working with a bit recently. She's fantastic. Her book, Moves to Greatness, has loads on practice, and it talks about how to design office space in these different ways, the environments you might want to go for a walk in, for example, plus all some of the stuff that I've been talking about. She has a slightly different system with 4 elements, but it's like 80 to 90% crossing over her Phoebe system. Stuart Heller talks about practice as well, but Ginny's book is one of the best places you can go with this. Richard's book, Leadership Dojo, has got some good stuff on this as well. So designing practices, a super, super important thing you can do with clients. It's that kind of coursework, homework beyond the coaching sessions is kind of how I think of it. I see this leading to change. On EFC, people change. Like, it takes a little while to get a practice, then they get into it. There's normally a sort of dip, and they love it, and then they hate it. There's different curves, learning curves people can have. But after a while, people show up differently. They look differently. Their friends and family and colleagues are saying they're acting differently. They're getting that feedback, and it just enriches your life. So, as a coach, I would say we need to be building our own capacity before we can just give these to other people, right? We need to embody these different capacities ourselves. And, the 4 elements is one map. It's not the only one. It's a nice map to check. Okay, as a coach, do I have some capacity in these areas? I'm more like fire and airy, for example. I'm never going to be super empathic and sensitive as some people. But, I've built that. Yin yoga, there's another nice water practice. Another nice one for water practice. My own, forget my own practice. That's another nice one for that. So, as coaches, as trainers, are we building those capacities? So, I hope this helps. Look up the Embodied Facilitator course. Look up other videos on 4 elements. Loads more videos on practice. But I wanted to do like an epic list of